Well, hello and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for a new episode of A New Go of New Home Sales. I'm your host, Anya Chrysanthemum.
Hello, I'm John Lee.
And joining us today is a very special guest, Matt Riley. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So Matt, I don't think you really need an introduction, but for those listeners who may not know you, and since you've been wearing lots of different hats throughout your career in home building, we'd love to hear your story of where did you start and where did you ended up now?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. It's going to be a fun, exciting conversation. Always good to chat about new home sales technology and where things are headed. So really short version is I started off selling homes in the models. I've worked for a few different home building companies, large and local, been in multiple markets, Indianapolis, Indiana, Huntsville, Alabama, Raleigh, North Carolina. And then for several years, I was out in the sales and marketing consulting land, working with Group 2 and such great folks over there, and still kind of work with them on more of an advisory role, kind of a builder board of advisors. But about a year and a half ago, decided to start my own home building company here in Raleigh. So really excited. I've got 3 fantastic partners, and we're growing rapidly. So we've started. We started last year and pulled our first permits in July and did a whopping 5 closings. And this year we'll close anywhere from 50 to 60. And then next year we'll be around 100. And so we'll see where we go from there. But that's the short version of my backstory, and just always enjoy being out there, kind of front line of how we can innovate and make things better for our consumers and our industry when it comes to new home sales and marketing stuff.
We go back a while. We probably first met in 2015, 2016. When you first approached me, you came with Myers Barnes.
Yeah.
And that's like a legend, and he still is a legend. And when you actually came to visit my little old office there, I felt like we had to prepare for the head of state, because I was like just so excited that you were joining us. But since then, we have been connected through all your endeavors, from different builders and different agencies, and we really appreciate that you've been working with us. So one of the interesting questions is, now that you've worked on both the builder side and on the agency side, what would your recommendation to mid-sized builders of what things they should outsource versus do in-house for sales and marketing functions?
Ensuring that partnering with the right people is key. Like in my opinion, there's no way to bring in the level of expertise that you need. It's so many different aspects of whether it's technology, whether it's sales training, whether it's marketing help, you literally can't afford to bring all that level of expertise in under one roof.
Right.
And so, I think a really good combination is a little bit in-house and a little bit out-house, so it's like, so having someone who can be the champion and driver of that department or that initiative, but also has that essentially extended team in those different areas of expertise that you can kind of bring in. And so it is vital to have somebody that in-house that understands the vision and understands where you want to go. So you can have really great and challenging conversations with your partners that you work with, and then help and then together steer the direction of where you're trying to go.
That's good insight there and good advice. A lot has changed over this last decade that we've known each other, and particularly with sales and marketing. Can you kind of elaborate some of those major changes that you've faced and implemented?
So, what's really funny is I somehow became known as like this marketing person, right? Mm-hmm. And so technology and marketing. And so for me, and I'm actually really a salesperson at heart. I started off selling homes in a model with a builder in Indianapolis, and just got really, really good training. And so then ended up in Huntsville, Alabama, and then the market just collapsed, right? So, and I've always been a technology nerd. I've always enjoyed that stuff. But I got into the marketing side of things because it almost out of default. I was really the only one at the time only one in my organization that understood a lot of how the technology worked. I was doing a lot of innovative things. Like as we were hitting the last Great Recession, I was living in Indianapolis at the time, and that was the last time we saw gas at like $4.79 a gallon. And so that business was that particular builder's business model was drive a little bit for a lot more house kind of thing. And so the market started contracting, those outer rings started contracting. And so we were actually starting to do home buyer webinars before webinars were a thing. So, before it was even, there was no Zoom, like it was basically a hacked up version of Skype, and we were trying to bring in people. So it's really about utilizing the technology side of things to help really drive where we want to go. And so I am very much a pick your model. When I say your model, like how you want to do business, and then how can you then innovate and then ensure that you're making it really, really easy to do business with. And so for me, that's what I look at is what's the best way to make it easiest for someone to do business with me? I want to make it as simple and streamlined as I can, because the more complicated things are, the longer it takes for them to come to a buying decision. And so at the end of the day, and this is where I tie in utilizing marketing strategies and sales strategies together, is when they all come together, the sole goal should be to shorten the sales cycle. And so if you make it really easy to do business with you, and that could be your realtor partners, or that could be your buyers, your customers, then you make it easy for them, and they'll say yes more often. And so that's really where, for me, it all kind of comes together, and it's the catalyst of what we're trying to accomplish, is just really trying to be easy to do business with.
Yeah. I think we're so similar in our background, where you come from sales, I come from sales. We have both that marketing background and the love of technology. But I think that's what makes you understand the bigger picture, because so often we have the side of the salespeople, we have the marketing people on this side, and then the technology is on the completely opposite side. So you really bring it all full circle.
The misconception with that, really quickly, is people think that you've got to be a programmer or a coder to be, and really what you have to understand, you just have to have a holistic understanding of how things work. So then you can actually have, when I say challenging conversations, John, there were a lot of times when back in the day, our old home building company is Royal Oaks Homes, we were doing 450 homes a year. It would be like, hey, can we do this? And it'd be like, I don't know if we can. And then it's like, no, we can do this because this technology over here exists. It's just not accomplishing what it is we're trying to accomplish over here. So like, you see how these things are related. Well, I didn't know how to code the stuff to make it work, but if you know enough about it to have those type of engaging conversations, and you'd be like, wow, I didn't think of it that way. We can sure try it. Are you willing to pay for it to innovation? And I'm like, yeah, let's go.
Well, one interesting thing with you, Matt, is not only you're early adopter and you're breaking new ground, but you also break the old rules. And one of the big rules way back when we first started was everybody had to print brochures. And, that's one of the reasons you came to me. And then one day you said, Royal Oaks Homes, we are no longer going to print brochures. And I was like, what? Nobody ever does that.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that and how that transpired.
Well, you thought you were ripping everybody's blankies away from them as their childhood blankies. But yeah, I mean, it was just, so one of the things I was looking at was what we were paying for print material and all this kind of stuff, and updating and managing plans and all this kind of stuff. So we had about 48-ish, just call it 50 floor plans that they were just there, right? So they were all central. They were done by, updated by a CAD person. And then there were all these problems that would occur. You would update a floor plan. And then somehow someone still had an old brochure in the model home, and you'd sell that house with the wrong option like 8 times, and it cost you money every time, so it was this whole big thing. And so that's when we got together as Rendering House, and we started. I was like, I'm going to convert all these freaking plans and have everything located in one central spot. It was twofold. It was consumer facing. Who doesn't love configuring their home and changing the colors and in real time? And that was the one thing that really set you apart at that time, was in real time being able to design the exterior of your home. There were other interactive floor plan options, but nobody had that technology of the outside interaction part of it. So I looked at it, okay, from a consumer perspective, they want to do this. Who doesn't want to do that? They can do that with their car. They can do that with now, IKEA and other, whatever it is. But they couldn't do it on the most expensive purchase, the biggest purchase they were ever going to make. So that was one part of it. But the other part of it was I was justifying the expense. And at the time, it was probably $75,000 to convert roughly 50 floor plans into renderings and interactive floor plans. But I looked at it two ways how I was going to pay for it. One, I wasn't going to do any more print brochures. That's a portion. But the second portion was how much money in not building the mistaked, the changed house over and over and over again, am I going to save because there's some outdated thing going out there? Now, when I said it was like taking away everybody's blankie, was because that's what people would come in and they'd be like, well, people want to walk out of here with a brochure in their hand. I'm like, no, you think people want to walk out of here with a brochure in their hand. Like if you have somebody that's throwing a conniption fit because they want a brochure in their hand, guess what? You can print one of these off, but we're just not going to have these standardized cut sheets, these marketing cut sheets on slick, glossy paper. And you put everything in a folder plus a price sheet. You spent 3 hours with somebody trying to narrow it down to one of a kind. And then you create this brochure, you stuff all 18 floor plans that you offer, and you send them off on their way to be even more confused when you spent 3 hours trying to make them not be confused, right? And so that was kind of the process. But we'd go in the model. I'd instructed our sales management team. I'd go in the model, and we would literally go check the salespeople's file cabinets because they would inadvertently print them off and stuff them in. So you would literally, we would go in as a team. As soon as I walked in the sales office, I would open their file cabinets and I would go through their drawers every time to find the cut sheets that they were printing off. And I would throw them in the trash can, rip them up and throw them in the trash can. I was like, we are not using it. It was about 6 months of not really paying attention to their personal spaces in the model homes, because I was like going through everything to make sure that we ripped that Band-Aid off. But once we did, it was like, oh, well, this makes total sense. And then we went to touch screens in the model and being able to go to the kiosk system and let the salesperson and the buyer do that together in the sales center. So it started off as one thing, and then it led to another whole interactive, joint journey along the way with the buyer and the salesperson on site. And then it led to the buyer being able to go home and do stuff on their own. And you have
registration information, you got analytics.
That's right.
Yeah. And obviously it succeeded because that builder sold for a good sum, and it allows you to now start a New Home Inc. company.
Right. That's right. Absolutely. So
obviously, Matt, you are still around a lot of new home salespeople. And I don't know if you hired any new home salespeople yourself yet in the company. I'm sure you're going to be hiring a few over the next few years. But what's that new blanket now? What do you think that salespeople are holding on to, whether it's a belief, an idea, or a practice that we just can't let go of, and that you think it's time to break out of it?
So we we just hired our first salesperson. We're going to be hiring a second one very, very soon.
If anybody wants a job.
That's right. Live in the Raleigh area. But yeah, so, I think the biggest thing that the industry the salespeople are struggling with right now is working that muscle again of actual. I think this sounds so basic and sounds like we're talking about something from 15 years ago, but it is about product demonstration. And we've gotten out of a habit of that. And I'll be honest, I was, the first salesperson, I was terrified to hire someone that had been in new home sales only for the last couple of years, because I felt like they were going to come in with the wrong expectation. So I didn't hire someone that had been in new home sales before, but they had been in, real estate. So that is as the first hire. So I think as we start, to fully answer your question, I think as we start to get back into it, it's product demonstration, but I think we're going to start getting into a little bit more of a centralized, lack of a better term, model, where you start to have a centralized storefront. And then that starts handling areas or geographical regions. And that's how we're going to start setting up as we get into larger size neighborhoods that are, that are 3 or 4 year projects for us. We'll start setting up a centralized storefront that then services a certain geographical area. I even think that having a literal retail storefront in certain areas, instead of building an actual model home somewhere with today's technology, you can have rolling spec homes or whatever to show product, but you can still have a centralized literal storefront somewhere to drive traffic to that still serves a geographical area. I mean, you think about, stores like Starbucks or Chick-fil-A or, all these places, they don't open stores, well, sometimes in like New York, they might across the street, but like in our areas, they don't open stores right across the street or right down the street from each other. They look at how the traffic patterns roll, and they look at what geographical region that serves. And I think that we as home builders can take a page out of that book and really start to lower what it costs to operate a community and that storefront by itself.
A lot of home builders now have embraced the idea of virtual models, but I do think that some people still want that feel, touch, smell.
Sure.
So I can definitely feel comfortable buying the virtual model, but then at the end of the day, I think it is nice to be able to go to a physical location. And I think you're so right that it doesn't have to be full on model. It can just be almost like a showroom where you're showcasing certain finishes, certain feels. So again, it is bringing that touch into it.
You're still building houses, so you're literally going to still have something that's touch and feel, right? Exactly. So, but you don't have to have so many variations. And that's where I think if you have a centralized place, you can even have kind of a hybrid design center, right? So you're going to have, you don't have to have the giant design center with physical, 400 samples of flooring. You can have the touch and feel of what you deem to be the most important, and then you can have the virtual stuff that lets people, hey, well, let me show you what this kitchen this kitchen cabinet's going to look like in this kitchen setup. You hit a button, and then like, here's the actual cabinet door. You don't have to show every color, right, in physical touch and feel, because you can show that representation. And I think that's what we can do with our model homes with the ability of virtual staging and Matterport tours and video and all of that kind of stuff all allow us to have kind of that. I think it's a hybrid model. It's not all virtual. It's not all in person. It's a hybrid model. It gives us the best of both worlds.
Yeah, 100%. So Matt, obviously you're going to be scaling up pretty quickly here. So for a home builder who's maybe in the same position, or somebody who has not embraced technology and thinking like, hey, I would love to scale up as well, what are some of the systems that you would recommend investing in, or what are some of the systems that you are looking at personally in order to achieve that goal of, going 5x, 10x?
Wow, 5x, 10x. I think it's control, like when you look at a home building operation, you want to have some controlled growth, right? Like that's what we try to look at. Now, when we go from 5 homes to say 50 homes, that's a 10x growth, but that is really just a situation based on land opportunity, right? When we first got going versus, what the breadth of what we had the ability to physically put homes on. You've got to invest early on. For me, it was, you have to have a high functioning capacity website, so something that's the literal start of it. We've talked about a little bit about like content, from what comes first, the chicken or the egg. I mean, it literally is content. I mean, for an example, when we first started, as I was building out the full website, I just created a couple landing pages and integrated your app into that. And that essentially, for the time being at a smaller scale, I was able to utilize that as a functioning website. Now, you'll start getting past a scale of return once you go past a certain size, and obviously that wasn't our long-term solution, but we still integrate that into our full functioning website now. So you have to look at, is what I have currently there, is it going to handle the capacity of what I need it to do? And so that's looking forward from a website and a technology perspective, and is it going to integrate with the things that I'm going to need and be able to handle the content that I've got to create. And so that's where we started. And that's where I think we have to start. It's going to be content first, and then you have to have the shell, the website, the app, everything else that fills the gap. And you have to have the technologies have to align so they communicate properly. And so now we're also in the process of onboarding our ERP system, so that way, so I was just talking with Tony, who's our salesperson, and taking him through training. And, it's like having the back end of the ERP tied out to the rendering app, because as they feed together and all the options and all the pricing, the buyer can literally build out like they can with their car. They can literally build out the home that they want and see pricing in real time. So thinking about where you want to go and what type of experience you want to give your consumer, your buyer, is really going to help dictate the plan, the path that you need to go on. And so,
and I know you've already experimented some with selling online too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're really covering the full gamut. I mean, we've been working with people where their community builders are built on your land to pass that ERP pricing options, lot status information over into their design app, and then ultimately allow them to buy online. So you're already playing with all those and then tying it in with your CRM as well. That's
right. Absolutely. CRM systems, ERP systems, website, content systems, how those all come into play. I mean, all of that stuff. Like how are you going to deliver the content to your consumer to make it easy to do business with / make it easy to say yes?
You provide a lot of those unique capabilities, because locally here, we see you on Facebook all the time. You're out there as both a marketing person and a salesperson, walking the neighborhood, talking about how a house is built, and also having that great technology capability. Just wondering, for the future sales and marketing function, do you see technology as an integral skill set and being able to cross between sales and marketing on different platforms?
At 100%, 100%. You hear talk a little bit about what's most important, is the marketing department going to end up being more important than the sales department? Is the sales, it's like this, like which one's better kind of thing. Right. And it all circles back to like the business model. I think it's a hybrid, right? Like you're going to have a department that's responsible for driving traffic and branding, but then you've got your people in the field that are going to be the mixture of salesperson and quote unquote marketing, because they're going to be the ones that are out there, creating the videos. I mean, what you just said, like when we first started, we had zero finished product. I had no content. So all I had was my phone. I bought a little DJI Osmo with a wireless lapel mic.
And a drone. You had a drone.
And a drone. I've always got a drone. Always have a drone with me. Always. Yes. A really good camera for pictures and a wide angle lens and a nice tripod that's easy to tear down and take with me. But, it was me looking like a moron, walking through houses in selfie mode in a house in frame that nobody had ever seen before. And then taking that out and pushing that out to social channels, anything that I could get my hands on, because no one knew who we were. But what I can tell you is that 100% of the people that bought a home from us / me at the moment, at the time, because it was me selling it, 100% of them watched those videos.
Right.
100%. And I can tell you that 70% of the people that I just interacted with said, "Oh yeah, you're the guy in the video." You know what I mean? So 100% of people that bought watch the videos.
That's a high convergence rate from you just showing a walkthrough of a community or a plan.
Yeah. That's right.
So content is obviously really important still, but you also mentioned pricing and making it easy for consumers to say yes to you.
Yeah.
So I assume that you show your pricing up front. So can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because we were recently at Jeff Shore's Leadership Summit, and I was sitting at a round table with several sales leaders, and one of them, we were having this conversation about showing pricing, and she said, "But I don't want to put pricing on my website because I want them to come in person to see me, because this is how I want to sell." And it all kept jumping to me is how I want to sell. I want to sell. And I was thinking, what about your customers? So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, yes. And now I would say the past 2 years has made it really, really challenging to show pricing, right? And at first, and I'll be honest, at first, when we first launched it, we couldn't show pricing because I didn't have anything, right? So I didn't have any history to be able to be like, this house starts at. So it was only spec building, and it was based on a whole coming soon strategy. No one knew the price until it was released. I mean, it was very much a pre-sale program for that you would launch a new community for, but it was basically for individual spec homes. We're running that kind of marketing program to launch individual inventory homes. So there was a bit of that. Somebody, if I'm going to say what I'm going to say, and somebody would be like, "You're a liar," because I looked at your website a year and a half ago and you didn't display. Well, it was because I didn't have pricing to display. I didn't have any historical data. Right. I used to be, Anya, that guy. Even at Royal Oaks, for the longest time, we did not display pricing, base pricing on our floor plans, because I literally ran experiments on how many leads I would get when I displayed pricing versus how many leads that I would get if I didn't display. Now, obviously, if we had inventory homes, the house is for sale, you would display that price. But that was, I mean, golly, I was going to say that was like 4 years ago, that was really like 9 years ago, right? Like, like that was a long time ago, and things evolve, and you have to evolve with what customers expect. So then we shifted, and now obviously we started showing base pricing. Now we also show base pricing on our website even today. However, I do it a little differently because I'm not yet in the pre-sale world. We're going to be as we launch into our larger project, our larger 180 lot, 140 lot kind of neighborhoods. So that's a first of the year kind of initiative and launch. But what I've been doing now, what I was able to do is, once I started getting some historical data, even though we're spec only, I would just take I'm just taking whatever the last inventory home that I sold of that floor plan, that's now the base price of that floor plan in that neighborhood. So, because you want people to self-qualify, right? Like you want people to be able to self-qualify, especially when you've got a different neighborhood. I mean, for instance, I've got a couple different spots of property where they're 1.5 acre, 2 acre lots. And that's something that's really hard to find in those areas of like Apex, Cary, type areas. And so you would get people that want, oh yeah, I want 2 acres, but they have a $400,000 budget. Right. And I'm like, well, the lot is $400,000. You know what I mean? Like it's across the street from the lake. It's 2 acres. Like the lot's $400,000. And so you have to be able to put something on there because you want them to self-qualify. Because I don't want this interest list of people whose total budget's 400 and I'm trying to sell it for 1.7. You know what I mean? Like when we go live, because then that means my list is no good whatsoever. And so all that to say, now, yes, firmly believe in putting pricing on the website. One, it's transparent, right, to the buyer, and it allows them to self-qualify, because that salesperson or sales leader at the Jeff Shore conference, when you're really busy, the salesperson's going to be yakking saying that all my leads coming in aren't qualified. So do you want to be wasting your time with unqualified leads? And I don't mean like off by 25 grand. I mean, my budget's 400 and I'm selling $1 million homes, right? So that's where you want them to be able to self-qualify and have full transparency. Now, if you can't show your value proposition online within your content that starts to differentiate you from your competition, if you're just looking at on paper versus me and on paper versus Pulte, right? And if you're just looking at price per square foot, I lose. But if I'm only making it about price and price per square foot, then that's my fault. Right. And so I've got to have the content, where we come back to content, to allow them to self-qualify, but then also allow them to say, oh, this is different. This is why this might be more. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think that this is one of the biggest misconceptions that most sales leaders have in their mind, is that when you put pricing out there, I'm going to get less leads and I want more leads. But at the end of the day, like what we've seen, especially in the last 2 years, more leads does not equal better. Like you really do want to give fewer leads that are already further in that sales funnel that self-qualified, and now they're actually more serious buyers. So your salesperson can now spend more quality time one-on-one, actually differentiating what makes you different from that pulte home.
Well, yeah, it's for clarification. This is really bad grammar, but I'm doing this intentionally. More better leads are I'll always take more better, right? I'll always take more better.
Right.
But I don't want more less, right? Like I don't want more lower quality. And so that's where letting them self-qualify is not completely, but have a better understanding of at least where you start. And again, if you're not telling your story online, if you're not telling your story where your buyers are engaging, then that's what you have to address, and not necessarily it's not pricing. It's you're not telling the right story.
Yeah. And I think this is where most people are struggling right now really badly, where we're having this discussion between, but people cannot make good decision online where they really need that salesperson to guide them. And I think a lot of times it is true right now because we are lacking the proper information, the format online in order to take that buyer through that journey. Because if you look at the car dealerships, again, what I can accomplish on their website right now, I can educate myself pretty much fully, probably better than I would be able to educate myself in person with like a newer car salesman, right? With all the information that's out there. So I think that is where we should strive to get our website to the point where we have enough content, educational content. And it is true, it's not going to be easy, right, to create that content, because home buying, especially building a new home, is a complicated process. But I do believe that the right technology in the right format can make it a lot easier for people to digest that information. Just like, attending a class in person versus attending an online course. Like a lot of people prefer the online format because that's the way they prefer to learn. For me, for example, being an older millennial, that is the format that I would choose anytime over going to sit in person with the salesperson. But that's where
I really feel like in this environment of high inflation, high interest rates, that issue about self-qualification and transparency is more and more important. That's why we're building in our app and our technology the ability for the buyers to, as they interactively design all those different options and choosing home sites, the prices automatically change. But because interest rates are so high now, it needs to have a real-time mortgage calculator. So you can say, hey, is this countertop worth the extra $15,000, or whether I'd rather put it into a $10,000 upgrade for an office or something like that, and let them make that evaluation. So when they come to the salesperson has already had a curated, well-informed, buyer, and they can take them to the next step. It's not about home sales, it's about home delivery. And I think we can really make the process, much better for both the buyer and seller using technology.
Yeah, I agree. And the only correction I have is jokingly is you said interest rates are so high right now. Interest rate
relative to the history, yes, it's still pretty good.
Right.
But I'm saying for their monthly payment, it's still an issue that they have to be concerned about.
Well, and it is, and the reason, so it's interest rates are kind of back getting to what a normal would be, but also compounded on top of that is the rapid appreciation.
Right, that combination is what's making the affordability index go down.
That's right.
Right.
Absolutely.
So I'm hoping that using technology, they can like I said, figure out all this stuff up front, and so they're not wasting your time or theirs.
Yeah, absolutely. And setting them, they don't want to come in like the really one of the toughest things for a buyer is when they come in and they think they're going to be like they come in when they meet with you and they engage with you, whatever that engagement looks like, is they think they're going to get X. They've got their heart set on this because this is what they think, that they know what their budget is, and then this is what they think they're going to spend. And if you don't have that level of transparency, you're not showing them what it is, and then you're going to be like, yeah, okay, and I'm making a number up. So this house is going to cost $400,000, and they think I get it all this way. And then they come in, and it's like, no, this house is actually going to cost $495 if that's how you want to build it. Right. And then you have to start. That's a really tough objection to start overcoming. Because if your budget's $400 and that's the top of your budget, now you're stripping things away, and you're taking away from the buyer what they thought they quote unquote already had. But if you would have had that full level of transparency up front, and they would have never gotten attached to the things that they couldn't have had in the beginning. Right. And so then it would have made this, you could have had the sale versus now you're literally taking things off like, sorry, you can't have that. You can't have that. You can't have that. And now it's a whole different sale and you're essentially apologizing.
Right.
It's like walking through the model home, the walking through the old model home, and where a lot of builders make the mistake, Anya, is where everything's an upgrade, right? Like they've got $175,000 worth of upgrades in that house. And so what we would do when we build a model home is, what is the average buyer going to spend for that neighborhood in that area? And that's roughly what we're going to spend, maybe a little bit more, just to give people a little bit more variety. But if you know your buyer is going to on average spend $30,000, you shouldn't put 100 in your model, because you spend that time, because all they do as soon as they walk in, I like that. And you go, oh, well, that's an upgrade. And then it completely changes the conversation. Now everything is, you went from demonstrating to pointing out all the upgrades.
Yep.
And so it's the same thing. It ties in. If you don't have that level now, instead of demonstrating the home and showing how you're different, you're now on your heels and you're apologizing for everything. I'm so sorry. That's going to be extra. It's not in your budget. Oh, I'm so
almost
sorry.
feels like a bait and switch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it could be, and it just sets up a whole different sales process that you shouldn't have to have.
You know, you talked about this a little bit earlier about the changing organization of sales and marketing. One role that has really emerged in the last decade is the OSC.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that role is going to be more integral, or it's going to change a little bit in the future of new home sales?
I certainly think it's still an integral part and will continue to evolve. I think I foresee the OSC role getting more into being a part of the actual transaction, and not just the inbound lead management person that's like, just
not just directing traffic. You're actually engaging with the buyer.
They'll become more an integral part of the actual transaction, and depending on the builder's business model, could also be someone that's writing contracts.
Right.
It may make some.
They just need the tools to be able to do that.
Yeah, you need, yes. So the short version is it continues to be an integral part, and I think it'll continue to grow based on the things that you put in place, right? Because if they're just directing traffic, like you said, but that means your tools are going to be more outdated, because they can only direct traffic. So depending on what you embed into your program is really going to have a direct impact on what type of involvement that OSC role is going to have. I mean, we saw really large builders completely eliminating their OSC departments across the United States. Right. Because at the time they're operating very short-sighted. It's like, oh, well, I don't need it, because, and I understand that logic. I don't need it because I only have 6 homes I can sell in each neighborhood a month anyway, and they're gone on the first of the month. So why are we setting up? I get all of that, right? But that's not forever. We're already seeing that those days are gone. The days of bidding and all of that kind of stuff are, for the most part, it's still happening in certain areas, but like for the most part, we're back to like 2018, 2019 levels and sales arena. And by the way, I'm totally fine with that. 2018 and 2019 were great years for housing. Yep. But the difference is you're back to 2018, 2019 sales levels with the expectation of 2020, 21, and 22 from a buyer perspective of how you provide your service.
Right. I think the buyers in the future now, they have a little bit more leverage there. They're expecting more in terms of that customer experience. They're expecting to do more themselves. They want that more that transparency. And they have options and choices now. So I think you're going to have to work a lot harder for that. And so that kind of leads up to my next question. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges that builders are going to have to face in the next 3 years? Because it's not going to be like the last 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be the convincing, and the rate world that we have right now is here to stay. Like the days of the threes are over unless we start printing funny money again. Because the only reason that they were down that low, it was artificially pushed down. It was never even real interest rates. And so I think the biggest challenge is going to be to show buyers why they should buy a house. You know, because right now, if you turn on the news,
why should they buy it now? A lot of people are saying, I don't want to buy at the peak. I don't know if I have a
they're at
job.
the peak, right? They think they're not as scared about the interest rates as they are. They're scared about buying at the peak, and then the bottom's going to fall out. And then because our last memory of a recession was the Great Recession.
Right.
Not all recessions are that way. And what a lot of people don't know about the Great Recession, there's documentaries about that. You check it out. But like we were days away from our ATMs not working. That's how bad it was. Like
the banks are going to collapse. Remember,
the banks were going to collapse, and you weren't
too big to fail. Where the government had to jump in and bail everybody out.
It was horrific,
right?
You know, and so that's not what happens every recession, but that's our most recent memory. And so it's going to be, it's going to be the challenge is going to be buy a house now, and then why, right? And so, you know, why, if you're just building the same old thing that you've been building for the last 10 years, you haven't innovated anything, you haven't innovated the experience, then good luck. It's going to be a tough road for you.
Yes. Well, I think this is a perfect place to end our podcast, because I know we could go on and on talking about data and all the other stuff that we love to geek out on. So we'll save that for another time. We would love to have you back on maybe in a year or so and hear an update on how your home building business is coming along, and we wish you all the best luck, always cheering for you. So thank you so much, Matt, for spending this time with us. We really appreciate you being on today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
And if somebody wants to work for Matt or learn more about you, tell us what you're doing. Where can people find you, and any speaking engagements that you're doing, or where, what are you?
So yeah, I'll be you can find me on the socials. You can go to our website, newhomeinc.com. You won't find me there, but you'll be able to see what we're doing there. So you can find me on social media. I will be speaking next month. So this is August 17th date that this records. So I will be speaking on the 21st of September. Hopefully this will be announced by the time this rolls out, at the next TSM Triangle Sales Marketing Council meeting. So we'll be talking about a little bit about kind of how we actually sell certainty in an uncertain timeline or uncertain times. So that's what we'll be talking about with the TSMC at the end of September, the 21st. And then they'll be releasing IBS schedules soon. So, next scheduled would be the Builder Show.
Yes, certainly look forward to seeing you there. And thanks so much again. And we'll look forward to hearing from you and all the updates, all the things that you're up to.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, Matt.
Bye.
Bye.